Good evening, and welcome to tonight's forum. We are honored to have Dr. Bob Lorenzer, Democrat, and Andrew Gale, Libertarian, candidates for Michigan's 1st Congressional District, with us this evening. All three candidates for this office were invited to participate in this 1st Congressional District Candidate Forum. However, Representative Bergman is unable to attend. I am Gretchen Carr, moderator for tonight's forum. Our timers are League of Women Voter members Nancy Nordford and Ann Swaney. The candidates will be on the Tuesday, November 8th ballot in the Michigan general election. In Michigan, a registered voter may vote in person or by absentee ballot if you have applied to vote in that manner. The League of Women Voters of the Grand Traverse area is a grassroots, nonpartisan organization. We neither support nor endorse political parties or candidates. The League strongly believes that democracy is not a spectator sport. We sponsor this forum because it is our mission to promote and to facilitate the active and informed participation of citizens at all levels of government. We want you to hear these candidates discuss why they are running for office, why they think they are qualified for this office, and how they would deal with the issues facing the U.S. House of Representatives and the people living in Michigan's 1st Congressional District. The League of Women Voters is providing this forum as an opportunity for candidates to express their views related to their candidacy. Statements expressed by the candidates are not endorsed nor opposed by the League. Also, the League of Women Voters does not certify any candidate responses to questions as accurate. Voters are encouraged to fact-check information shared at the forum. This forum is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on TACM Facebook or League of Women Voters Grand Traverse Area Facebook pages or on Spectrum Channel 189. Questions for the candidates have been submitted for this forum through the League of Women Voters Grand Traverse Area Facebook page and can be submitted there tonight. During the forum, questions can also be submitted through the chat function on Zoom. Any questions not asked during this event will be shared with both candidates after the forum to help them know what other questions and concerns citizens have submitted. Members of the League have screened the questions for clarity, general interest, relevance, repetition, and propriety. Protocol includes no name calling or derogatory statements. I will now review the guidelines which were sent to the candidates before tonight's forum. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes for an opening statement, 1 minute to answer each question, and 1.5 minutes for a closing statement. Candidates are reminded to restrict their answers to their position on the question asked and not to make any personal remarks about the other candidate. The timekeepers will provide an alert 30 seconds before a candidate's time is up and again at the end of their answer time. Candidates need to complete their sentence and stop speaking at that time. If a candidate doesn't stop talking, he will be muted. Alphabetical order will determine who speaks first tonight. The order of responses will then be alternated so that each candidate will have equal opportunities to give the first response to a question. The closing statements will be given in the opposite order from the opening statements. We will begin tonight with an opening statement from Mr. Gale. Andrew?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us on here for our debate. My name is Andrew Gale. I'm running for the Michigan District 1 U.S. Congress, and I am here in Traverse City. I've got I'm the father of 2 children. I'm a husband, and I'm the founder of a business called Bay Area Recycling for Charities. We are a nonprofit. I'm the president and the executive director for that organization. I decided to run for this office because as an ex-Republican, I wanted to make sure my voice was being heard out there. And I feel like that there's a lot of people that are Republicans currently that don't see representation with our current administration and with our current U.S. congressman. So I decided to throw my name into the hat and to run for this office and to help with the important decisions that need to be made in our coming future here to make sure our democracy lasts for a good long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Bob Lorenzer, your opening statement.
Yeah. So I'm Dr. Bob, a family physician from Marquette who truly lives here. Thanks for the invite to this event tonight. Abraham Lincoln, I believe, said, democracy is the rule of the people, for the people, and by the people. And that's why we're here tonight. You know, the informed voters and the candidates are here to make our democracy and our nation stronger. The informed voter is our crown jewel. I thank Andrew for being here tonight with me, and I only wish our other opponent had the courage to join us. Why am I running? Why am I running for Congress? Is to fulfill the duties and the obligations, the responsibilities of a representative. That is to uphold the Constitution, to be a leader who people throughout the country and the district, look for guidance and inspiration, to inspire others, to understand, our district needs and provide services to help them resolve problems, to educate, to inform, to develop workable and affordable and acceptable bills that are signed into law, to cooperate, collaborate, negotiate, and compromise, to be available and accessible, to serve in an ethical manner, to be a truth teller, to be kind, to be just, to be wise, and to have the courage to do the right thing. I hope we enjoy our evening tonight and to learn and listen to each other. And again, thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We will begin the questions with our first response from Dr. Bob. Our first question tonight: if elected as the Michigan 1st Congressional District Representative, what are 3 goals you hope to achieve?
It's not my goals, are they? A representative is supposed to represent what's important to you, the public. So there's multiple areas that we could address: economic policy, inflation, taxes, women's reproductive right, gun violence, healthcare, climate change, immigration. But I would add to that, what I hear: government leadership, judicial system, unifying our country. It is my job to represent you, the public, not to bring what I think should be brought to Congress. That's what a representative does. Many issues and that we could bring.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Andrew, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
If elected as the Michigan 1st Congressional District Representative, what are 3 goals you hope to achieve?
Well, as a representative of this state, of this district in the state, I would want to get some honesty and integrity back into our political system. That would be one goal. I would want to get the government out of our doctor's offices and out of our bedrooms and allow people to have the freedoms and the rights that they deserve. So as a libertarian, the definition of a libertarian is to increase the freedoms of the American people and to allow them to have the freedom to do what they will. What Dr. Bob talked about just now with abortion rights and our inflation rates, those are all very hot topics that are going to be very important for us to contend with. And so my goal would be to get in there and get right to work and create a system where our rights are not being violated and our freedoms are being expanded.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next question, Dr. Bob. Do you support continuing U.S. monetary and military equipment support for Ukraine in their war with Russia? Why or why not?
So the war Ukraine and Russia is, if I could say, it's a world war. It's a threat. It's a threat to the free world. the United States needs to represent the freedoms that the rest of the world may not have. We need to continue our support. It's difficult. I know it's a difficult issue. We've been in wars that we don't want to be in. This is a war unlike others. This is a nation, Russia, attacking another country. If we let that happen, the cost and the expense to the world would be much greater than what we're doing now. Difficult situation, and I do support continuing.
Thank you. Andrew?
I would also want to continue to support the Ukraine efforts protecting themselves. The United States of America is a democracy about 230 years old, and in Europe, there are many democracies that have emerged because of the success that we've had as a country. Ukraine is a democracy, and they were attacked by Russia. What I would want to do is create a system there where they have the ability to protect themselves. And I wouldn't want to put our own boots on the ground, but I think what we're doing with providing them with weapons and humanitarian efforts and helping them protect themselves is critical. As a libertarian, again, it's not our job to be the world's police force. I feel like we get into way too many conflicts around the country, around the world. And I feel like we need to step away from a lot of different conflicts that we wind up trying to get ourselves into.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next question is on the topic of education. There is a lack of teachers. There is a lack of teachers in both Michigan and the country. What would you like to do to get more credentialed teachers in classrooms? Dr. Bob?
Yeah, so the issue of teachers, but it's also the issue of education. Isn't the three, don't we have simple goals for education? Prepare a citizen, a worker, and enrich their lives. So that's what education is all about. To get teachers, we have a shortage of workers throughout. Teachers, school workers need to have a decent job. If they don't have a decent job, they're not going to end up staying into education. So I would end up supporting educational reform to make sure those who work in the educational system have a good job. A good job means fair wages and benefits, being treated fairly, having a sense of promotion to that. They definitely have a sense of purpose. So just like many other professions that are not representative, they don't have a good job. We got to bring back teachers and good jobs. They got to have a good job. Then they will come back.
Andrew?
Can you repeat the question one more time for me, please?
Of course. There is a lack of teachers in both Michigan and the country. What would you like to do to get more credentialed teachers in classrooms?
Well, one of the things I'd want to do is to take a big part of the Department of Education that's at the federal level and move that money directly down to the states and down to the counties, so that money is not paying for federal administrators to be calling the shots. Schooling and education is a personal thing for the families and for the people. I also would like to see privatization of our school systems and allow the free market to do more into that arena than what we're doing right now. Being a teacher has got to be one of the hardest jobs in the world. I've raised 2 kids, and it was not the easiest thing in the world. And having 26 kids or 30 kids in front of you, I couldn't imagine. So getting them the money that is spent and wasted in Washington, D.C., and bringing that money back home to the counties and to the townships where it belongs.
Thank you. One more question on the topic of education. In what ways should the federal government be involved in education of displaced workers? Dr. Bob?
Of displaced workers? I don't understand, sorry.
Workers who have been out of the workforce for a period of time or have been laid off.
Yeah.
Or whose qualifications are no longer relevant in today's market.
Yeah. Education is not just from kindergarten through 12th grade or through college. We need to continue educating ourselves throughout our life. Education doesn't stop just because you hit 2025. So yes, education has a major role for retraining, continuing training, or educating of anybody of nearly any age. Now, should all of that be supported by the government? Maybe not, probably not. But yeah, education has a premier role in education throughout the lifespan. If we don't continue to learn, I really wonder what would happen to us.
Andrew.
Thank you for that question. So I'm an employer, and we are educating our employees every day on the job. We pay them to get educated into the things that we do with recycling and composting and all of the different aspects of what we do. I would like to see it become more of a free market for the re-education and not use federal dollars for using it for training and re-education. Not saying that that isn't a good thing to happen, and in lots of places it is. However, bringing that money again back home to the counties and allowing the free market, if somebody wants to train somebody, in a certain industry, electrical, subcontractors, bring that money back here so we could take that and do it locally.
Thank you. On the topic of the economy, Dr. Bob, what do you?
Can I suggest that we give Andrew a chance of answering a question first?
Yeah, I could use a challenge. You can go back and forth, Dr.
Yeah, I thought
Bob.
we were going to alternate the questions, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. You beat me to the punch there.
I'm so
I'll
sorry.
take this question. That's okay.
Andrew,
yes.
What do you think should be done to get inflation under control?
I'd like to give this question to Dr. Bob. To get inflation under control. So inflation is out of balance right now because of the fact that we just printed about 40% of our money in 2 years as the federal government printed money as fast as the presses would go. And in order to bring that inflation back into check, all of our natural abilities are in play right now. The feds are raising interest rates little by little to cool the economy down, and hopefully we stop printing money right now because we're in debt quite enough with this. So it's just a matter of, and this isn't just a United States of America problem. The whole world is experiencing this inflationary growth here. So bringing it back under control, but let's stop printing money, this fiat money that we've created to try to cool the systems down using our interest rates.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Bob.
Our current representative states our inflation is Biden's inflation, and the solution is to de-elect all Democrats. It is simply not true. It is our inflation. Energy, food, and housing are the major factors that are driving inflation. So to address inflation, you got to know what's causing the current inflation. There's multiple causes, but part of it is still basically a supply-demand problem, persistent supply chain interruptions, transportation issues, Russian invasion of Ukraine, affecting our food and energy, China's economic slowdown, fewer workers, inexpensive, borrowing and greed. So we need to look at the facts, what's causing inflation, and address those and try to give some meaningful, solutions to that. Just to blame it on somebody else is completely, absolutely unacceptable.
Thank you. Our next question for Andrew. Do you think human-induced climate change is a concern? And if so, what legislation would you propose in the U.S. House to reduce its impact?
Yeah, we all see it out our windows and on the Weather Channel every day. The climate is being affected by our carbon outputs. And that's one of the things, even as a libertarian, there are lots of things inside of our party that want to be there to protect our environment. The legislation I think that you would need to do, again, is something that has to be driven at the free market level. Going in there and just changing using green initiatives is a great start. Again, try to bring that money back towards the local communities to help them make those changes. It's going to be a slow and gradual process. And unfortunately, I don't know if we have a lot of time to make those changes. So looking forward to getting in there and rolling up our sleeves and, getting that job done.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Bob, would you like me to repeat the question?
Oh, no, that's okay. Climate change is real. It is not a belief. It is a fact. Now is the time to agree on solutions and take action before it's too late. As I'd like to quote our Native American colleagues, they say our decisions today should result in sustainable, world 7 generations into the future. So yes, we can, we should, we must protect our environment, prevent further climate change, keep America moving and improving our economy doing so. I do believe we can improve our economy. We won't destroy it by addressing, sustainable green energy and environmental protection on the way. It's possible, it's doable. Our nation just has to believe it, and off we go.
Thank you. Andrew, we're still on the topic of the environmental topic. The forever chemicals, PFAS, per and polyfluoroalcohol substances are pervasive in Michigan. What more can be done at the federal level to address this environmental issue?
At the federal level, which was created by our founding fathers, and the functionality of our government is to protect our borders and to provide legislation and judicial oversight and to provide a police force to protect our rights. And it's in that legislative aspect of making those chemicals illegal or making them change their ways at places like Dow Chemical, where they need to make those changes very quickly in order to make sure that we slow the curve in the growth on our PFAS and the dangerous chemicals. And it's not just PFAS, there's a lot of dangerous chemicals out there that need to be regulated. Those things, again, are driven by the free market, but the legislation is there to control the free market.
Dr. Bob.
Yeah, forever chemicals. Well, let's just talk about environmental problems, right? Contaminations. We need to address that, but where do you address that? It is in the Constitution. It states that we need, the federal government needs to support the general welfare of its population. There's where we need to invest in public health. I do believe that regulation needs to be appropriate. Too much regulation, people don't like. Too little regulation, like in terms of food and water, people don't want to say, hey, my water and food's not safe. So for PFAS, for other areas, we need to strengthen our public health. We need to strengthen, where the facts are, and then the legislation could go, listen to their expertise, make it workable for Americans. That's what we need to end up doing. I personally don't trust all by itself, free enterprise to do this. That's how we got into the problem. The government, free enterprise, private people working together.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Andrew, the Great Lakes are so important to the quality of life and the economy in Michigan. What type of protections for the health and the use of the Great Lakes would you support in the U.S. House?
So locally, we have groups that are against the Line 5. Our Great Lakes, we've got, I believe, 1/5 of the world's natural, fresh, clean water here as our Great Lakes. We need to protect those things every day. Having lines going underneath the lakes, I think, could be brought up at the federal level more, and again, with legislation, create a system where the free market is curbed with some regulation of what they can and cannot do in and around our Great Lakes.
Thank you. Dr. Bob, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay again. we need sound environmental policies that protect our future. And for us, especially, that is the Great Lakes, that is water. I don't think that water should be a commodity. It should not be under the purview of industries or private enterprises to control our water. It's in the public trust. Water is part of a part of us. And again, I get back to the Native Americans. We are part of this. We need to protect our environment, protect our air, protect our water. That's what we need to end up doing. So, especially us in Michigan with the Great Lakes, we are the guardians of the water.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. I'm going to direct the next question to you, Dr. Bob.
Okay, that's great.
What do you think is the best way to help people living below the poverty level?
Living below the poverty level, because why? That's what you got to know. Why are they living below the poverty level? Do they not have a livable wage? A livable wage, fair benefits. It all gets back to, I think, jobs. We need good jobs. American workers and businesses do not need to be at odds against each other. Each is critical to their well-being. The economy would be better, when this happens. So I get back to good jobs, fair pay, treated fairly, promising future, feeling psychologically and physically safe, and a sense of purpose. If you do that, they will not be below the poverty line because they will have fair pay, treated fairly. We need to move forward. We need to treat workers not as a commodity, but as real people.
Andrew.
As an employer, again, I find it really difficult to try to keep up with the larger businesses. They have many things that they can do that we cannot do as a small business. They've got the ability to insure people and to provide 401ks and to provide higher wages than a small nonprofit here in Traverse City. Again, going back to that libertarian value, the free market is what needs to drive these types of forces. And I'm not saying a free market in such a way where people are just working all day for a small paycheck. It's difficult to get them to a point where we can start to pay a higher wage. So having some subsidies in the things that the federal government does to keep the larger companies, whether it's pharmaceutical or oil or other industries, where they can line their pockets and they can keep that federal money to themselves, being able to allow the small businesses to do that.
Thank you, Andrew. And on the topic of the economy, Andrew, I will direct this next question to you to begin with. Many tax changes from 2018 will expire in 2025, including the increased standard deduction for individuals and families, as well as deductions for small business owners, such as the 20% qualified business income deduction. Many of the changes that helped large corporations will not expire. What should be done about this discrepancy?
Is that towards me or Dr. Bob?
That is towards you.
Okay. I'm sorry, could you repeat just the first part of the question again?
Many tax changes from 2018 will expire in 2025, including the increased standard deduction for individuals and families, as well as deductions for small business owners, such as the 20% qualified business income deduction. Many of the changes that helped large corporations will not expire. What should be done about this discrepancy?
So that's what I was talking about in the last part there. And that is the big companies they've got the federal government in their pocket, and they have the ability to control those types of things. With those deductions, I mean, this, as a libertarian, that tax paying money that we put towards the government, that is our money. And we shouldn't be having to pay that high of a tax rate, and taking away those deductions and taking away those things that help the small businesses and families, I think is a cruel way to treat the American people. I believe that we should go through and fight against that very hard and bring those deductions as much as we can back to the people. Reduce the taxes. And the only way you're going to do that is by reducing the spending that the federal government does on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Bob, would you like me to repeat the question?
No. Complicated question. It was a complicated question, but we got this. Lower taxes for the rich isn't the answer. What was promised with the 1980 tax cuts, which are mainly for the rich, were repeated again in 2017 or 2018. Trickle down economics doesn't work. What has worked, been a 50 trillion, this is trillion, $50 trillion transfer from the bottom 90th percent to the top 1%. It created a decrease in the middle class, a marked decrease in competition, price gouging, choking out of small businesses like Andrew's, and the end to the one of the most prosperous period of development America has seen. Health, like what's stopping small businesses, healthcare, education, infrastructure aren't free. It needs to be paid for. Taxes should be fair, therefore progressive. Taxes are the cost of a civil society, not a burden to bear. I agree with Andrew, we need changes.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. This next question, I'll begin with you. What do you believe needs to be done to bring back trust in our U.S. elections?
Tell the truth, right? How do you develop trust? Well, let me say, how do you lose trust? You lose trust by lying to people, deceiving them, right? For somebody else's gain. So to get trust, you can't lie. You have to be truth tellers. I would end up saying, people have asked, what are very important things outside of infrastructure that I would support? We need truth tellers back into politics. Truth tellers back into politics. If we do that, we will get trust. If we have trust, we'll be able to look at facts. If we look at facts, we'll be able to identify problems and look for real solutions. We need truth tellers back in Congress. And that's why I'm running, because our current representative is not participating.
Andrew.
Could you repeat the question for me, please?
Of course. What do you believe needs to be done to bring back trust in our U.S. elections?
I agree with Dr. Bob. We need to speak the truth, and we need to confront fraud when it happens. The elections that we've been having in the past 6 and 8 years are good elections. They only keep getting better. The fraud that's been brought up by Donald Trump and his party is not the truth. And so as we go on, we get better and better at these elections. The most dangerous thing you can do to our democratic system is to take away the faith of our election system.
Thank you, Andrew. We have a question from our audience, and Andrew, I'll direct this first to you. This question is from Alice. What 3 U.S. House committees would you like to be assigned to, and why?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if I know all the House committees there. I believe, being a business person, I would want to be involved in a committee that works with businesses. And in my business, one of the things that we're trying to do is to create, from recycled content, housing for employees and workforce housing. So housing, and I think business and environment. Again, being a nonprofit recycling organization, I believe that the environment is one of our duties to protect. We need to be the people that are there day in and day out, protecting our water, our land, our air, and everything about it, with including animals and the infrastructure around our systems to protect our environment.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Bob,
Yeah.
what 3 U.S. House committees?
Well, number one, you're not appointed to 3 committees. The second, it's not our choice. You're assigned, and hopefully they would use Andrew's or my skills to appoint us. People know that I've talked about this on the campaign trail. Here I go. I want to be on the 3C committee. It doesn't exist. The 3 C's, cooperation, collaboration, and compromise committee. I want to be on a committee that can move things forward. Now, with that being said, it doesn't exist. Hey, I'll serve where I can best serve. Healthcare, being a physician. How about education, natural resources? A very important committee right now is the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee. How does Congress behave? What guides their behavior? I think I and Andrew would serve with dignity, honesty, and truth-telling to whatever committee we were assigned to, and we would do a great job.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. The next question is from Shelley, and I'll start with Dr. Bob. There is an affordable housing crisis in northern Michigan. In the last 3 years, short-term rentals outnumber long-term rentals 2 to 1 in some areas. What are your thoughts on bringing housing costs down so that year-round residents can afford to live here?
So we blogged about this a lot where I have. Where has all the housing gone? So let's just get back to some facts. We need truth-telling, don't we? The cost of housing has increased 4-fold greater than the rate of your wage since 1970s. So a common house right now that for say like a younger couple, instead of looking at a $400,000 house, you should be looking at a $100,000 house. Their wages have not kept up with the price of housing. The price of housing has increased 2.5 to 8-fold your wage since the 1970s. There are multiple areas that we could go in for the housing where the lack of housing, the lack of federal subsidy, state support, zoning rules, regulations, the cost of construction. Housing, affordable, accessible housing can be addressed locally by the state and with federal government assistance. The most federal government assistance is using your taxpayer dollars wisely to help address an issue.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Could you please repeat
Andrew.
the question one more time for me?
Yes,
I get mesmerized when I hear Dr. Bob speak.
Sure. It just disappeared
Sorry,
from my
buddy. Sorry, buddy.
screen here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Andrew, there is an affordable housing crisis in northern Michigan. In the last 3 years, short-term rentals outnumber long-term rentals 2 to 1 in some areas. What are your thoughts on bringing housing costs down so that year-round residents can afford to live here?
Thank you. So the housing bubble started here right before COVID with the increased amount of money that the government printed, created inflation. That inflation drove lots of prices up. When those prices finally softened, they came back down to a higher inflationary level. So being able to go through and create jobs inside this market. Right now, you can get a general contractor to build you a house. It's going to take them 3 years. They don't have the labor force to be able to do it. And so having better skilled labor around here and taking some of that federal money, if it's going to be there in the system that we've created, and bringing it back down to these communities to increase the amount of employees that we can bring in and create this housing. It's going to take employees that probably need housing in order to build the housing that we need. So being able to go through the process of doing that.
Thank you, Andrew. I have a question directed to you, Andrew, and then Dr. Bob, you'll have an opportunity to respond to the question as well. Mr. Gale, you said that you support privatization of schools. What type of oversight would you suggest to ensure that children are receiving a quality education and meeting education metrics?
So currently we follow some federal guidelines on that. And I believe that with privatization, which has been proven to do just as good, if not a better job of creating a smart child, can control what that person learns. Right now in our education system, you can learn more just by going online on the internet and finding out information compared to what we used to do with just teachers in front of a classroom. As these young kids are growing up, more and more they're in the process of getting their education from what the world knows. And so having the ability to go through and taking away the stops of being able to teach somebody, whether they're an artist and they want to learn art, or whether they're a mathematician and they want to learn math, being able to take away those guidelines at the federal level, I think is an important move that we need to make.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Bob, regarding the privatization of schools, what type of oversight would you suggest to ensure that children are receiving a quality education and meeting those metrics? I believe you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I support the privatization of our public school systems. We need to improve our public school systems, not privatize them. But if you are privatized, right? If you are privatized, the regulations, the rules that they would end up doing should be very similar to public education. I don't know why they would be different. Their goals are the same, right? What is the goals of education? To prepare a better citizen and a worker to enrich their lives. So why should not the regulation for a private school and a public school be the same? I think they should be. I believe, the federal government, not the federal, the state governments, right, run education. The federal government's there just to assist that the rules and regulations that are in place, put in place by the states are followed. No, I believe in a strong public education system. And if people want to do a private educational system to that, that could happen, but without federal support.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And I'll direct this question to you, Dr. Bob. This is a question from Ryan, one of our listeners. If elected to Congress, would you be in favor of creating or passing legislation to end the proxy wars in Yemen, which is a humanitarian crisis essentially being funded by federal government and the military-industrial complex?
Remember, as a diplomat, I served in the Mideast for probably 4 of my 10 years. Pretty familiar with Yemen, worked with the Yemen citizens during there. Proxy wars are bad. We need a foreign policy that has moral grounds to it. It's based on ethical grounds. The United States, to be a world leader, needs to follow ethical guidance. Our global actions need to be, supported on justice, courage, integrity, and other principles that we support. Without such, we will not be world leaders. We will be lost. The Yemen war is a terrible war. It's still going on, and thanks to the United States bowing out, of that. Sorry, it was a disgrace.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
If elected to Congress, would you be in favor of creating or passing legislation to end the proxy wars in Yemen, which is a humanitarian crisis essentially being funded by the federal government and the military-industrial complex?
Yes, I would be in favor of ending that proxy war in Yemen. Again, with the libertarian values, the job of the United States of America is to protect our own borders from invasion. And so fighting a war, whether it's in Ukraine or Yemen, it's terrible that we have to be involved in it. The one in Ukraine, I've got a better understanding on. The one in Yemen, I don't have a great understanding on, but I believe that one of the things that we need to do is scale back our military spending and scale back our involvement in every other country's problems. We're 4% of this world's population, and we are still being very cavalier about our efforts and energy to protect what we think are our resources in other countries, and being able to get out of those things as fast as possible would be my goal and objective if elected to Congress.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew, I'll direct this question to you first. What is your stance on separation of church and state? How will your stance on separation of church and state affect your legislative votes?
So that was the First Amendment, right? So we went in there, and the very first thing, probably because of the religious people at the time of our creation of the Constitution, we're wanting to like involve religion into it. And so the United States made the right and correct stance by separating church and state. And I believe that that is the right thing to do. The United States government has no involvement in religion, and the religion should have no involvement in the United States government, other than the individuals and the freedoms of the people to be able to do what they want at the time, for what they want when they want.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Bob, would you like me to repeat the question?
Oh, no, that's okay. You know, I support your religious beliefs, and I hope you support my religious beliefs. But as a nation, a federal government, our federal government has separated church and states, and promise you and promises myself our religious freedom to the maximum extent possible, as long as we are not harming each other. So again, I would agree with Andrew on this one. We can have different views. We can live peacefully together and hold our various views. This gets brought up a lot when we talk about women's right, reproductive rights. We can hold our various views, but we can peacefully live together, and the government should not be involved.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. We have another question from two of our listeners, Carol and Pete. And Dr. Bob, I'll start with you. Can you tell us how you have stayed informed on the many, I'll back up. Can you tell us how you have stayed informed on the many issues addressed by Congress, and how do you plan to hit the ground running if elected?
Yeah. You know, I wonder how our Congress people could do this. You know, running for Congress, it seems like you either have to be the most informed person. My day starts at almost at 5 a.m. and, you know, it ends tomorrow, right? It ends after midnight. Doing what? Trying to keep up to date, trying to become informed, trying to look for facts, trying to find the truth. You have to look beyond probably the special, you know, the subject matter experts. You know, in Congress, it's called lobbyists. We need to look and explore. We need to get to experts. It's a difficult job, folks. I mean, this job that we're both going for is unbelievably gruesome in terms of what you have to understand and where to go. I believe a job of a congressperson is to not to be the expert, but to find the experts. And here we go again, to trust the experts. I will look at both sides. If I go to the agricultural people, I need to go to the business. If I go to the business, I need to go somebody else.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Could you please
Andrew,
repeat the question?
of course. How can you tell us how you have stayed informed on the many issues addressed by Congress, and how do you plan to hit the ground running if elected? I'm happy to repeat that if you'd like me to.
No, that's fine. I got the gist of it. Thank you very much. So I stay informed like the way most Americans stay informed. You know, I catch news on the TV and on the internet. But starting this process of running for US Congress, I've been able to talk to people and listening to people and getting an idea from their perspective of what they see the issues and what they see the solutions being. That's probably the best way for me to stay informed. And to hit the ground running, to answer that part of your question, that would be the same thing. Just going out there and talking to people and understanding what the issues are, balancing that against what you know, and looking, like Dr. Bob said, for the facts, finding the truth inside there. I look at a lot of different news stations. I even go on to Fox News and listen to them and what their issues are. So just gathering that information, but then bringing it back to the people and bouncing it off the people to get a better idea of what their individual rights and freedoms are needing to be protected.
Thank you, Andrew. And Andrew, this next question will begin with you. Do you think the Electoral College, which officially determines who wins the US presidency, should be replaced by the outcome of the popular vote? Why or why not?
So the Electoral College, I understand the founding fathers and why that they did it. At the time that they created the Constitution, they had no idea how big states would be or how vast an open country. And the Electoral College allows those states to have a voice, the states with a smaller population. Otherwise, you're going to take away their reason for voting on things like the presidential election. So our Electoral College system is based off of the number of US Congress people you have in your district and the 2 senators. And that is the system that we created for electing the president. And it's only for electing the president. I would say that it does need to be reformed. I don't think that it's the all for one aspect. I think that those electoral colleges could be split up in the states equally and provide a more representative showing of what the people in the United States of America are looking for in a president of the United States of America.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Bob.
Modernization of our national election standards is a reasonable thing to look at, a very reasonable thing to look at. In Congress right now, they're looking at the Electoral College, say, if I could say, Improvement Act. There's an act in the Senate, there's a bill in the Senate and a bill in the House that our representative has voted against. And if we want to stay with the Electoral College, remember, it's just not my decision, it's your decision. I'd be a representative. So as a representative to the members of the 1st District believe it should be popular vote, I would bring that to Washington for discussion. But until then, we need Electoral College reform to prevent what happened in 2000, to prevent what happened in the last election. Our current representative voted against that, unlike the bipartisan support in the Senate and in Congress right now. Let's fix what we have and prevent another disaster from happening. We do not need another January 6th.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And I'll have you answer this next question first.
I hope it's an easier one.
What role, if any, should the federal government play in balancing the natural beauty, environmental quality of northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula versus increases in population density pressures?
I didn't think they were mutually exclusive. How's that? Does that mean a place like New York or Los Angeles or Denver, with a bigger population center, should not have the same environmental protections and the rights that we have? We need to have both. We need to end up having population centers with densely populated, moderately populated, or unpopulated areas to have the same environmental standards. It will be a different design. I got it. It's a different design. But I worry about the underpopulated centers, right? Oh, there's no people there, so why don't we do open pits? Why don't we contaminate the waters? Why are we worrying about this? The same standards for a rural area, for a suburban area, and an urban area. Protect the environment, sustain the economy, and enjoy what we have.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Andrew, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. What role, if any, should the federal government play in balancing the natural beauty, environmental quality of northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula versus increases in population density pressures?
So again, going back to the libertarian values of free market and allowing people to have their freedoms, the federal government's job is to create legislation to help curb and create a system where both of those entities that you talked about can live in harmony with each other. So being able to have increased population, allowing buildings to get taller and having our growth going upward and not so much outward, I think would take a lot of strain off of our the beauty of our environment up here. We all love northern Michigan because of the beauty that it provides to us. More people are noticing this, more people are moving here, and being able to create an environment, with better roads, better systems, construction that goes vertical and not horizontal are things I believe that would make our environment be more sustainable also.
Thank you, Andrew. And the next question comes from Shelley. This is for both of you, but we'll start with Andrew. What are your thoughts on corporate campaign donations? And have you received or would you accept corporate donations to support your campaign?
I believe that you should be able to give any amount that you want to a candidate. I have not yet received any funds, and nor am I out seeking them. I believe that in a free market and in a free society, that if somebody wants to donate whatever amount of money that they want to donate, that would be acceptable by me. I don't think that the system is built for that currently. I believe that the more money a candidate has, the more advertising and negative press that they can put out on their competitors. I think that there needs to be rules and laws that are changed in that aspect, but I believe that the amount of money that a candidate can receive as a donation should not be controlled by the federal government.
Thank you, Andrew. And Dr. Bob, would you like me to repeat the question?
No. I have a problem with unlimited money. We need desperately in this country campaign reform. I started off by talking about Lincoln, for the people, by the people, right? For the people and by the people. That doesn't mean, I want to be bought by corporations. I want the winner, the winner usually has the most money. I don't want that to happen. I believe in campaign reform. I do not believe in unlimited money, not at all. I believe that my race, against Andrew and against our incumbent should be money. We should all get our money from people within the district, not outside the district. I do not want a major corporation to sponsor any of us to win. You elect your representative in your district by the businesses, by the people. Yes, I am for campaign reform. I think there should be limits that I've been given. Have I received money, from PACs? No, unless you end up saying, well, sorry, I received it from education. No, I haven't. I've received endorsement. I received money from American Academy of Family, physicians. They supported the role of healthcare, but that was $2,900. No, I do not think anybody should be getting unlimited money. Citizens, the Supreme Court case, absolutely not. Our country is turning into a country by the rich. That needs to stop.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And we have another question from one of our viewers. This is from Shelley, and I'll direct it first to Dr. Bob. Though it is legal in many states, including Michigan, cannabis continues to be classified as a Schedule I drug and therefore remains illegal on a federal level. What are your thoughts on declassifying cannabis so that legislation can be passed to legalize it federally?
Is that coming to me?
I'm sorry, this is first to Dr. Bob because you had the last question first, correct?
Yep.
Or you answered, yeah.
Just repeat the last part of that question for me.
Yes. What are your thoughts on declassifying cannabis so that legislation can be passed to legalize it federally?
Yeah, I think it should be legalized federally, period. I think this gets to regulation, right? The regulation of marijuana. Doesn't it depend on the purpose and the benefits and the harm of the regulation? Right now, I think we're overboard on marijuana. The ship has sailed. Regardless what I personally think about that. That's why as a representative, I'd put away my personal biases, from marijuana. I believe it is, the ship has sailed. It should be legalized in the United States. There shouldn't be restrictions for that. This is where I would agree, as long as there's no harm occurring to others, allow people their freedom. It's really just creating more problems now. Legalize it, be done with it.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Andrew, I'm happy to repeat the question.
Please, thank you.
Though it is legal in many states, including Michigan, cannabis continues to be classified as a Federal One drug and therefore remains illegal on the federal level. What are your thoughts on declassifying cannabis so that legislation can be passed to legalize it federally?
Our founding fathers, when they created the Constitution, they gave the power back to the states with Amendment 10. And what that did is that allows the states to experiment with ideas, and different states will experiment in different ways on ideas. And the states have been experimenting with cannabis now for 20 years at different levels. The states have spoken. The cannabis is legal across most of the country. The federal government needs to get in line with the will of the people and the freedoms that we ask for. Being able to legalize that Schedule 1 narcotic, as they call it in the federal government, will release a lot of people out of prison that are in there right now because of a law that they broke that harmed nobody. And I believe that they should make cannabis legal at the federal level as soon as possible.
Thank you. And our final question for the evening before we go to our closing statements. What are the two issues that the U.S. House should address, and what are two issues the U.S. House should not address? We'll begin with Dr. Bob's response.
What should we address? I think infrastructure. I'll go back to it then. Let me do both of them. We should address infrastructure and truth-telling. If we address infrastructure, there's where the federal government can end up. I look at it as infrastructure is the backbone upon our economy could grow or shrink. But infrastructure would be not just the bridges and the roads, but also the hospitals, the schools, areas that you would provide, the private enterprises to be able to succeed. We should also get into truth telling. Maybe us in Congress should have a shock collar on, a light shock if you're just weaning, but hey, we need to get back to telling the truth. What should we stay out of? People's personal lives, women's reproductive rights, we should stay away from. I don't know. We should be able to stay away from telling doctors what they should end up doing. I should stay away from telling business people how to run their business. So personal issues, stay out of, but allow the foundation, the infrastructure for people to succeed.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Andrew, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What are two issues that the U.S. House should address, and what are two issues the U.S. House should not address?
So one of the issues I believe the U.S. House should address is to go to all of the incumbent representatives that are there and to make sure that they are not slowly trying to dismantle or quickly trying to dismantle our democracy by putting out lies about our democracy and our election system. So getting rid of that fraud. Another thing that the Congress could address is to go into the realm of overspending and to get control back of our spending habits. Being able to have a federal system that allows that money to trickle back down to the states and the counties and the townships where things happen. That's what I would address. The things I wouldn't address are anything that has to do with taking away people's freedoms. If there's something on the floor of the Congress that's trying to take away our freedom, then that needs to get off the floor.
Thank you, Andrew. This concludes the question part of our forum. Now we will start with Dr. Lorenzer giving his closing statement.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a good evening, and again, thank you for coming, and Andrew, thank you for participating. Again, I think it says a lot when our congressperson is not here. He's not unable. He actually declined to come. So I promise to work on issues important to Americans and members of the First District. And as your representative, I will identify and set aside my personal biases. I will listen first and talk later. I will not assume, but seek to understand. I think I would like to seek outcomes all of us can live with without compromising our principles of who we are as Michiganders. I will accept that good people may disagree. I promise to listen and learn. I promise to serve and respect, problem solve, unite, and represent all of us in the First District of Michigan and in the nation. We deserve an accessible and accountable representative, which we do not have. I say, what can I promise? I can promise you this, not as a politician, but as a grandfather, a father, a husband, a family physician, a friend, a worker, and a youper who really lives here, unlike our current representative. Together, we will move forward. Thank you. Thank you for the invite. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Andrew.
When I was 18 years old, I went to my dad with my voter registration card that came in the mail, and I said to my dad, "What am I? Where am I on this list?" And he said, "We are compassionate conservatives." And so that has always stuck with me. And a compassionate conservative to me for the longest time was the Republican Party. I felt like getting towards getting a smaller government and doing good things for people that need those things done for them was something that I could get behind. And over and over and over again, I went to the polls and I voted down the column of the R. And every time when George W. Bush, and I helped him get all three houses under his control, they spent more money than the Democrats ever did. And so I have to believe that there's other Republicans out there like myself that feel disenchanted by our current administration and disenchanted by our current congressman. And what I want to let them know is that there's a conservative out there, and the Libertarian Party is a great party. If you're looking at switching parties, it's more conservative than the Republicans and it's more liberal than the Democrats. And it is a great party about freedom and about autonomy. And so I want to encourage people to vote their conscience this year and get out there and vote. That's the most important thing. And do everything you can to make our electoral system work for you. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Bob and to the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, again, as I did last time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Dr. Bob, for being part of this forum. Your participation tonight allows citizens to learn about your positions on the issues and problems that you may face if elected to represent the Michigan 1st Congressional District. Thank you also to tonight's audience. The candidates, I'm sure, appreciate that you took the time to expand your knowledge about them and their positions. And thanks to those of you who submitted questions for tonight's candidates. Finally, thank you to the Traverse City Area Community Media, especially Matt Kern, for helping in setting up this virtual forum. Their skills, experience, and patience made this forum possible. For more information about candidates running for office at the national, state, and local level, as well as information about voter registration and voting, go to the League of Women Voters website, vote411. Again, that's vote411.org. Most importantly, don't forget to vote either in person or by mail on or before Tuesday, November 8th. For details on registering to vote or using an absentee ballot, visit the michigan.gov website. I'm Gretchen Carr. Thank you for joining us.